Hello everyone and welcome back to my video series where I take a look at the Democratic race for president and the candidates, in my opinion, on the state of the race. And these are the more well-known candidates, candidates that have consistently made the debate, who may be polling very well in some of the early states, and also candidates that, quite frankly, this is my video series, I find interesting. So, it's my video series. I get to pick who's in which video. Um, so the first candidate we're gonna look at is Andrew Yang. Yang has been running since November of 2017. He began this race as someone from outside the political class. I think he would probably still consider himself from outside the political class, but my opinion is once you run for office, and once you've dipped those toes in, you're part of the political class. He has made all of the debates up to this point. He will miss the January debate, which is on the day we're recording this video tomorrow. He has raised, in the fourth quarter of 2019, he raised $16.5 million. And the last FEC filing that I looked at showed him with about $6 million on hand, just a hunch over $6 million, which that's an incredible amount of money on hand, but it also shows that they are spending that money. In the fourth quarter, like I said, he's got a massive fundraising operation. He has a massive online support. The Yang Gang, he's running essentially as a single issue candidate. He's running on this issue of the tech revolution that is occurring in this country and across the world. And he's also running on this universal basic income. I have thoughts both ways on that. I could see it being a great thing, but I also see the perils in that. And also he says it's a conservative issue, and which that's partly true. This was a issue just like the individual mandate that the Heritage Foundation proposed back in the 90s. However, he leaves some parts out about the Heritage Foundation proposal. I believe in their proposal they said, we'll do this if you cut all of the entitlement programs. And there is some truth to the fact that this would be cheaper by just a smidge than all the entitlement programs, but I don't think Yang's proposal calls for that. He has been polling very well. He's polled above senators, representatives, and governors in national polls since August. 2 to 5% nationally is where he's hung out since August, which is very respectable, as I've said, for someone outside the political class. His RCP average at the moment is 3.5, and he is 45 years old. I think that any candidate that wins on the Democratic side will most likely include Andrew Yang in their administration, should they win, in some sort of role, a cabinet secretary, an advisor of some sort. I think Mr. Yang, if the Democratic Party wins back the White House, I think that he will definitely be a player in their administration. This next guy, boy, do I have some strong feelings on this one. Tom Steyer originally announced back in January of 2019 that he was going to focus on impeachment. And over the summer, the Mueller report came out, because he had been, even before the Mueller report came out, he had been banging the drum for impeachment. And really, if he'd have just stayed focused on that, I think he might be looked at more favorably. But this race has hurt that, in my opinion. As the chances for impeachment dimmed over the summer, he began to reevaluate that position. And on July 9th, about almost 7 months to the day, back in January, after he announced, "I'm not running for president," he got in. So he reversed that decision and has spent a staggering amount of his own money on the race. But unlike another self-funding billionaire, he has decided he wanted to get in those debates and compete in those early states. So he's got small online contributions to get on the debate stage. And until the polls that came out recently in Nevada and South Carolina, no one was taking him seriously, I don't think, on the Democratic side. He was showed in Nevada, he's in third, and in South Carolina, he's in second. But I think his success in those two states is due to a couple of factors. One, he has had a free run of those states. I mean, there's no one competing there but him. And the massive amount of money he has spent on television ads. You cannot watch MSNBC or CNN, which are places that Democratic primary voters are going to be watching. They're not watching Fox News. He has spent a massive amount of money on television ads on those networks. It's hard to watch 2 hours of television on MSNBC or CNN and not see a Tom Steyer ad. I live in Alabama. I see Tom Steyer ads all the time on those two networks. It's wow. But he has some huge hurdles he's going to have to get over. One, now that he's been shown to be competitive in those states, there's going to be a massive spotlight shined on his record, his finances, all aspects of Tom Steyer. And it's not pretty. He has something that came out within the past few hours that I just think is going to be massive blow to his campaign. Is this interview he had with the New York Times editorial board. The New York Times this year is not only releasing transcripts of their interviews with candidates, they're releasing the videos. So, and it was bad. He really showed a lack of understanding of the ideals that they were talking about, the policy positions, and also how government works. I think one of his ideals that he has talked about has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. this ideal of a national referendum. I want to ask people, and I really wish a candidate would bring this up. They'd say, Tom, you talk about this ideal of a national referendum, and citizens make good decisions. They also make really bad decisions. Tom, what do you think would have happened in 2000, 2002, even 2004? If we'd have had a national referendum on marriage equality, guess what? One of the candidates on this stage, him and his husband couldn't get married right now. And I don't believe it's constitutional. And to get it to become constitutional would require a massive struggle. These things take time. The last constitutional amendment was ratified in 1992, and it was proposed in 1787. It took that long. The closest constitutional amendment we've got to being ratified at the moment is the ERA, and there's even questions if that can be ratified because of provisions at the time. That's been in the work for 50 plus years, really 100 years, depending on which source you believe or how you want to calculate it. Yeah, it was bad interview. Another thing that was a national referendum was Brexit. And take a look at how well that's worked out. What happens if the voters reject it? His thing is people power. We'll get these things if we let the people vote on them. What if they reject it? This ideal that you think is so great. Are you going to stick by it then? What's going to be the threshold for passage? One vote? I don't think that's such a great ideal. I think the ideal of legislating through the legislative process is a good ideal. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan of this national direct democracy. I do not believe in a country this large and with this diverse of opinions. That is a great ideal. I think the ideal that we elect people to Congress, we have professional staff in Congress, which we should massively increase. I think that's a good ideal. I also think that through the government that I think bureaucrats is a great thing. Hello, Mr. I've got to make a video. Thank you. My cat. I just have strong feelings about Tom Steyer. His national polling average, according to RCP, is 2.2%. He is 62. And I think Steyer hopefully will flame out soon. The next candidate is Miss Amy Klobuchar. She is the senior senator from the state of Missouri. She has done well in a state that is trending red in a sense. Donald Trump came very close to winning Missouri in 2016. It is on the top of their target list in 2020. He done very, very well there. He won congressional districts slightly that sent Democrats to Congress in 2016. Some of those seats have since flipped to Republicans. It's one of the few states in the country where Republicans actually picked up some seats in 2018 that they won from Democrats. They were open seats, though. She is 59. I was do or die for her, though. It is a neighboring state. Unless she finishes second because of a pile up in the first position, I really don't see her being able to justify going on. She has definitely taken the moderate position in this campaign, and I think the impeachment trial is going to be very disruptive to her run. She has one campaign surrogate that could really get out there and campaign for her in her stead, but the gentleman is 92 years old, and I don't think he's got the national fame that he once did. Sure, it'll be like, wow, look at who she's got campaigning for her. That, of course, is former Vice President Mondale. But Walter Mondale got beat in 49 states in his own run for president. He almost lost his home state of Minnesota by about 3,000 votes. That's all that saved him. And a lot of people in the Reagan campaign wanted to recount, and Reagan might have won. But Reagan refused to go for a recount in Minnesota. So, unless she just has a massively impressive performance in Iowa, and the polls are not showing that at the moment. They show her about 5th place. I think she drops out. She's had a respectable run in a sense, but also it's been disappointing. I don't think she's been able to get any real traction, except here at the end. And like I said, I think the impeachment trial is just going to be disruptive to her run. Her RCP average is 2.8%, 59 from Minnesota. The next candidate that we're going to talk about is Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg, like Steyer, reversed a decision earlier that he wasn't going to run. In March of 2019, Bloomberg said, I'm not running. Then in November, he decided he was in. This was around the time that Elizabeth Warren was shooting off like a rocket. And there was a lot of fear in some corners of the Democratic Party that Elizabeth Warren was going to run away with it. Unlike Steyer, he's a total self-funder. And unlike Steyer, he has limitless resources. He's already spent over $100 million on this race. He's skipping the first 4 states and is going all in on the delegate-rich states on Super Tuesday. Like Steyer, he is massively spending on television ads, and Facebook ads. I do not have a Facebook, but the data shows that he is spending heavily on Facebook. So he's building a massive campaign. Infrastructure as well. He's opening offices across the country and hiring staff, and announced on Friday that that staff is going to be available to whoever the Democratic nominee for president is, and that he is going to pay them. He is prepared, he has said, to spend $1 billion to defeat Donald Trump. That is a massive amount of money to spend on a campaign. And I think that Bloomberg, he's aiming for the, unlike Steyer, he's aiming for the middle. He is talking about solutions to problems. He's talking about how, he was a Republican mayor of New York for a while, then he became a Democrat. He was an independent, then a Democrat. Bloomberg has a simple strategy, in my opinion. It's a brokered convention, and to stop the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders wing of the party. And his RCP average is impressive for someone that just got in the race in November. He's at 5.8% nationally. He's not, like I said, he's not going to be in the debates. He's 77. He'll turn 78 in February. He's 9 months older than Joe Biden. So there is the age factor. The next candidate that we're going to talk about is Mayor Pete, the former mayor of South Bend, who is going to turn 38 on the 20th of this month. Has a lot of good qualities. He's a veteran. He's well spoken. You listen to Pete Buttigieg and you hear a candidate speaking from heart and that has thought deeply about these issues. I think it says a lot about America that in 2020, an openly gay candidate can run for president and poll well. And that's just a small part, in my opinion, of his message. I think that Mayor Pete also has some interesting support numbers. You look at his numbers, he gets massive amount of support from older voters. He gets a massive amount of support from women, and particularly older women. And I don't know if that's because a maternalistic thing, if they see him as their child, a child of theirs, and they're like, oh my God, look at how well he's doing, and see a lot of him, their sons maybe in him. I have thought that for a while. I would like to see some more data on that. But Pete has had a very impressive run. I encourage everyone to go read his book or Audible version as I did, Shortest Way Home. It's a very, very good read, listen. The audio version is narrated by Mayor Pete, so there's that. So go out and do yourself a favor. He could finish essentially tied for first in Iowa. He could even win Iowa, and the same in New Hampshire. So, by any token, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, South Bend, has had a respectable performance in his run for president. He's polling at 7.5% nationally and has outstayed senators and governors. He will definitely be on the debate stage in January. He'll most likely, when they release the standards for February, be on the February debate stage. And I honestly think that he has a good shot at being someone's vice presidential candidate. And if he's not a vice presidential candidate, I definitely see him, as I've said, if the Democrats win back the White House in their administration, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, he definitely will hold some role in their White House and have a long political future ahead of him if he doesn't win the White House himself. The next candidate that we're going to talk about is Miss, she has a plan for that, Elizabeth Warren. She is, I have to fix my average for her nationally here. I screwed up on my notes, so I've got to make a addendum to my notes. The magic that goes behind making these videos. She is polling. Let me close that window. We're probably going to have to plug to a power source here in a minute. Let's close out Safari. There we go. She is polling at 14.8 nationally. That's the RCP average. She recently got the endorsement of a candidate who dropped out, Mr. Castro, who, in my opinion, ran the most progressive campaign of this race. If we remember back to those early debates when the candidates were really taking far left positions, it was Mr. Castro that was egging those positions on. As the debates have worn on and he has no longer appeared in those debates and is no longer in the race, the candidates are not as embracing of those left-wing positions. She's bet big on policy, as I've said, but voters aren't interested in policy. They may say they are, but they're not. And some of her policies, you take a look at them and you're like, but how? Her wealth tax. She gets a ton of scrutiny on this, and she has two legal experts that say it's constitutional, but there's just a range of people that say it's not. And how do you calculate this wealth? And her response, in my opinion, is not the best. I also think the impeachment trial could have an effect on her, like the other candidates who were members of the Senate. Although she did call for impeachment after the Mueller report came out, it said the instances of obstruction, the 10 instances, were more than enough to warrant impeachment and removal from office. But unlike Bernie, who we're going to talk about in a minute, she has less surrogates. Bernie has 3 members of the squad. She has 1. She has Miss Presley, who is a representative from Massachusetts. So she is supporting the senator from her home state and candidate she believes in. I think, though, the big thing we got to look at is how well she does in Iowa and New Hampshire. She's bet big on those two states. And if she has an embarrassing performance there, I think anything less than a second place performance in Iowa and really winning in New Hampshire. I think she has to win in New Hampshire. That is the neighboring state. It's going to be hard for her to go home after that. I think also her and Bernie are essentially pinching the same message. Hers is a little less revolutionary than Bernie's, but still it's a far left message, and I tend to think that I'm going to talk about this later. I don't think that's going to be the candidate that wins. So, but she has had an impressive run for someone who stumbled out of the gate and has had questions about their credibility throughout the campaign. So, 14.8% RCP average nationally for Miss Warren, and as I said, she's 70 from Massachusetts. I think that she probably will not get a role in a administration of one of the other candidates, and that's because they want to use her in the Senate. That they will say, you're better suited for a role in the Senate, fight for the values and issues in the Senate. Oh, me. The next candidate, who is, at the moment this video is being recorded, is experiencing a little bit of a surge, is Mr. Sanders, Bernie Sanders, the junior senator from the state of Vermont. An impeachment trial affects him less than other candidates because he has more surrogates, more high-profile surrogates to go out, surrogates that excite his wing of the Democratic Party, but also are a major liability in other parts of the Democratic Party. But for his wing, they're the surrogates you want out there. His supporters are passionate. They have learned some lessons from 2016. He is about to go nuclearly negative on his opponents. And one aspect of his campaign that I do not believe is getting enough attention is this Feel the Burn app. That his supporters use to connect with other supporters. His campaign is using this to go digital, basically in door knocking, and they're doing the ground and pound too. They're knocking on doors. He has raised a massive amount of money, and he is a formidable candidate. He, in my opinion, there's no question that he has a legitimate shot at winning this nomination at this point. But if that becomes more of a possibility, expect a massive spotlight to be shown on his background. He hosted a public access show in Vermont in the 80s. It has a ton of footage. And we've already seen snippets of it in some reports, and it is just awkward, cringeworthy. I'm sure if people dug into it more, they would find some very questionable positions taken. Other statements he's made in the past will probably come to the surface. So I think Sanders is going to have to react to that in a way that other candidates are not. He's been and this also gets to another issue. Is the Democratic Party going to nominate an avowed socialist? Republicans hit Democrats as socialists to begin with. Are they going to go across the Rubicon and nominate an avowed socialist? And how does that play? I don't think that America nominates a socialist. I do not think America elects a socialist president. An openly socialist president. He does have a point, though, that some of his voters, he could win voters from Donald Trump. I've often thought that the margin between a Trump voter and a Sanders voter isn't as massive as some people think. There's differences on policy issues between the two, but I think the voter between a Trump voter and a Sanders voter isn't this gulf. I think it's more of this. But I also think Sanders would have issues in some other places. I do not think Bernie Sanders wins the state of Florida. I think I think Bernie Sanders would lose Florida by a massive percentage. When comments that he made that were favorable to Fidel Castro are played on an endless loop in parts of Miami, when comments favorable to Hugo Chavez and Maduro are played in parts of Florida, don't think Mr. Sanders does as well. He does have also another problem. A problem that Mayor Pete has. He is not gaining support among African Americans. He's doing better than he did in 2016. But it's still a low amount of supporters. Now, he is doing very impressive among Latino supporters. So, but I don't know if that has the staying power. Like I said, when comments he made about certain leaders in that part of the world come out, does that support hold? His RCP average is 20.3%. He's 78. So, like I said, Sanders has picked up right where he left off in 2016 as a formidable candidate. But unlike in 2016, he started off this race as a top-tier candidate. In 2016, it came on late. He came as a response to people that did not want to pull that lever for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. I think he was more of a protest vote. But he also unleashed a very strong underbelly in the Democratic Party for something else. Now we get to the front runner. The unquestioned front runner. Joe Biden. With the exception of a few polls over the summer and in the early fall, he has led and led consistently. If Biden doesn't self-implode, this is his race to lose. But it's also Joe Biden. Biden could pull off a win in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and people be like, oh my God. And it's off to South Carolina and Nevada, huge wins there. And it's just into Super Tuesday and he coasts to a nomination. He finishes second or third in Iowa. Same scenario in New Hampshire. Goes on, has a massive victory in Nevada and South Carolina. Performs well on Super Tuesday. And, closes the deal out on Super Tuesday too. Has a very poor showing in Iowa and New Hampshire. And then people begin to question it. Has a respectable showing in Nevada and South Carolina. Super Tuesday becomes a massive do-or-die scenario for him. How much does the impeachment trial hurt him? How much are because remember, this whole reason we're having an impeachment trial is because of how much Donald Trump fears Joe Biden. He solicited foreign interference into an American election because he feared Joe Biden. And Donald Trump knows that Joe Biden has the best chance to beat him. Polls have ferreted this out. Joe Biden has a massive amount of support among African American voters. He was the first African American president's right-hand man for 8 years. Barack Obama, throughout his administration, talked about the importance that Joe Biden had. He was not just a placeholder. He was in the room helping make decisions and craft policy. Joe Biden was a very powerful vice president. He's had some trouble fundraising, but I think once we get into the thick of this, that will evaporate and Joe Biden will raise massive amounts of money. I also think that if it gets down to Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, Barack Obama gets in and makes that endorsement and says, this is the man that was by my side for 8 years and helped me usher in the economy we see today. He helped get ACA across the board. Talk about how personal ACA is to the Biden family. I encourage every single person watching this video to go to audible.com and buy the book, get the audio version, because it's more compelling in my opinion. Promise Me Dad, where Joe Biden talks about the pain of losing his son and him having to move on after this. You can hear the pain in his voice. There are obvious sections in that audiobook that they had to pause recording, start over, and have him start again because it was so painful reading those passages. This is a man that lost his wife, his young daughter, and almost lost his 2 sons on the same day, and had to bury one of those sons, and really probably had to, as at some points, that the other son, because of the personal substance abuse problems that he has had. This is a man that has overcome a lot, and he's still standing. Joe Biden is the unquestioned frontrunner, in my opinion, and I think Joe Biden will be the nominee. I just have thought this from the beginning. I've questioned it at points, but I think Joe Biden gets the nomination. I think Joe Biden most likely beats Donald Trump. And it's hard to see anyone else, in my opinion, beating Joe Biden. His RCP average is 29.3%. If you look at all the indicators online, 538 shows him as the favorite to win at the moment. He's 77. So his running mate will be very important. And does he make that one-term pledge? I don't think he makes it during the campaign. I think he probably comes out during his administration and says this is a one-term deal. Maybe he does announce it in the campaign. He says, this is who my cabinet is going to be. I'm serving one term. This is the future of the party. It would be a risk. But yes, 29.3% RCP average. Unless something just absolutely insane happens, I think Joe Biden is the nominee. I do think, though, once the impeachment trial gets started and you have Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bennet sitting in the Senate every day, and Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden have free reign on Iowa and New Hampshire and these early other states, I think that one of those two is going to win those two states. I tend to think that Pete's probably going to win Iowa. Biden finishes a close second. And I think in New Hampshire, Joe walks away with it. And then we're off to Nevada and South Carolina. At this moment, that's how I see it playing out. It could play out differently. I think this impeachment trial is just, that's the unknown at this point. We've never had an impeachment trial of a president occurring while they're running for re-election and the other parties in the midst of their primary and nominating process. So, we'll see how that works out. So, that's my video. I know I've went nearly an hour, but something I'm passionate about. I will post a shorter video after the debate, my reaction to that, tomorrow. I will see you all later today for this day in history. Until then, y'all have a good night.